Hello, 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 and welcome to the latest episode of the first edition. Today we'll be talking about narrative focus, which can actually mean a lot of things, but we're going to focus on what it means in terms of character and how you write character versus how you write the world, which is pretty important. And this is something I've noticed and seen for myself over the course of reading and watching many a movie and book, etc. So that's what we're going to be talking about and focusing on. And it's going to involve what I think is called the static character versus the extraordinary world. So let's go ahead and get started, shall we? And we're back with the first edition. I am your humble host, Literature Devil. And before we get started, if anyone doesn't yet know, I've actually launched my very own comic book called Dr. Alpha Miracle Child, and it's now available on IndieGoGo. And so far, it's 16% funded. Not too bad. It's only been launched for about 4 days, a little over 4 days. Already 16% funded. We have generated 4,000 out of 25,000. But other than that, we seems that we are on a good track to actually receive funding. And on that note, I wanted to let you know this might be the last stream for a while on the first edition. Mainly because I'm thinking of streaming more regularly on the main channel. And that's mainly because I wanted to help promote the comic. So what I'm going to do is set up a show that leans more towards commentary, but not this your typical news commentary. I'm talking about the other topics I like to talk about, which is the rights and the independent freedoms of independent creators and artists. And there's been some interesting things going on. For example, what's his name? Marcus Miller? Or Mike. I think it's Mike Miller. Something like that. I forgot what his name is at the moment. But his project getting ejected from Kickstarter over a political ideology that they have on there. But other than that, we can go ahead with today's topic, which centers around narrative focus. And as I said before the intro, narrative focus can mean a lot of things. It can mean just heading towards the idea, the ending that you want to portray to your audience. So if you think of a story and you want it to have a particular ending, or you want to convey a particular message, it's always a good idea to think of that sort of element first, your ending or your message, and then begin writing so you can meet that. So you have that theme underlying everything inside your story. But what we're going to focus on when we're talking about narrative focus is the character versus the world. And let's see here. There we go. If you recognize these two, this is the Clint Eastwood's iconic Man with No Name from Good and Bad and the Ugly, $2 More, and A Fistful of Dollars. And then on the right is Agent 47 from the star assassin from the Hitman franchise. And why I bring these two up is because they are perfect examples of what you might call the static main character archetype. And what we mean by that is that you may have been told that your main character should change over time or change over the course of the story. And while that is usually true, especially if you're doing a hero's journey formula or mainly any kind of formula, then yeah, your character should probably change from the beginning to the end. In some, even if it's a small manner. But then you have these sorts of characters, the static character, which they don't really talk much usually. They're very stoic. They already possess a high level of skill, and the character is more or less static. They don't change much. They don't really do much at all, other than be themselves and be an unstoppable force. That's basically their whole role, is to be a powerful, unstoppable force. You might see this also in the movie franchise Mad Max. Now he is stoppable, but he is very powerful. He wherever he goes, he changes things. He is it's an element that forces change. That's what these characters do also, especially if you go into one of the movies. I forgot which one it was. Either a few dollars more or a fistful of dollars. I can always forget which one is which. But it stars the story of Yojimbo, where Clint Eastwood's character walks into town, and there's been this feud raging between, I believe, the Baxter family and another family. One is more on the side of law, the other is more outlawish, and then you have the third party, which is the townspeople. And he doesn't. The Clint Eastwood character, the Clint Eastwood man with no name, doesn't. He walks in there and he is the changing factor. He's the one that changes things so that one outcome can emerge as the final one. But he doesn't really change himself. He's just a force. And what that does is that instead of highlighting or focusing on the character, that allows you to focus on the personality of the world around him. And what I mean by that is actually, that's why I brought up Agent 47, because especially in the new games, Hitman and Hitman 2, the 2018, I think, 2016, 2018, something like that, and the 2019 versions, that Agent 47 is a stoic, static character. He does not change in the least. But his role is to be the hand of death. He is the changing force within the game. And if you notice in each and every level, it's not 47 that gets explored. It's not his hobbies or his interests or his personality pretty much in any way, other than the most basic tenets of his personality, which is professionalism and producing good work at all times. But when you play through the games of Hitman, and this goes for almost every Hitman game, except, of course, for Absolution, that once you play through them, it's not 47 that is the focus, even though he's the main character. It is the targets, his assassination targets, and the world around him that becomes the focus of the narrative. It's a very simple narrative, and it's a very open narrative. So every playthrough can be a different story. You get a little piece of the story, and it's through dialogue, it's through actions, it's through following around these people, these characters, and the people around these assassination characters. And it's also the environment, what you can empirically see. It's one of the most outstanding levels in all of the Hitman games, which they have yet to reproduce, in my opinion, is, I believe, the first level of Hitman Contracts, which has you assassinate a character called the Meat King. And that one is heavy with the environment. It's very, very heavy with the atmosphere. And it's very dark, very brutal atmosphere. It's a horror stage. It wouldn't be outside of the realm of a horror stage, except you are an assassin going in there to complete an assassination. And same thing goes with Clint Eastwood's Man with No Name. He walks into the scene, he doesn't say very much, he doesn't change much at all. But when he does arrive, he changes things in a big way. And that brings us to the balance of what I'm talking about, the narrative focus between the character and the world in which the character resides. And one of my favorite other stories that really highlight this change this selection that you can choose between is the epic series called Lone Wolf and Cub. It actually is an epic. It's an epic, and it follows the adventures of Ito Ogami, or Ogami Ito, and through his disgraced status as he follows the path of an assassin while also following the path of revenge. But the thing is, even though Ito Ogami does change a little bit over time, it's not really significant. And he does go through one significant change, but it's not something that you would see in a character like, say, Luke Skywalker or Aang from Avatar. It's not a very significant change where he goes from wide-eyed, adventurous man to the stern-faced warrior. He's already the stern-faced warrior when we begin. He is the static character, more or less. And now, there is a very big change, and it's a very big plot point. But it's not very noticeable it's not a very noticeable change. If you see Ito Ogami before this change, and then you see him afterward, there's no visible or personality change. It's all that noticeable. And if anyone wants to reference it, it is what he has to do to assassinate the living Buddha. But that's the biggest change he really ever undergoes. But the real beauty of Lone Wolf and Cub is its very accurate and meticulous detail that goes into painting the world of Edo Japan at that time. And it's not only do some stories open up with little factoids to paint the scene, telling us little details of the minutiae of the government or how things went traditionally between the Japanese people of that time and what they believed and what the societal contracts told them to do and to obey. But sometimes they would make plot points out of these little traditions and various elements that he discusses. So usually, what that means is that when you follow a story about Lone Wolf and Cub, sometimes it's not just about mere assassination. A lot of the times, a lot of the power and the strength and the entertainment and the real power behind the story and the epic of Lone Wolf and Cub is the very meticulous attention they give to the world, about painting the world of Edo Japan. And they can do that because they don't have to spend so much time fleshing out and detailing the personality of Ito Ogami. He's very stoic. He has a very small personality. He is that traditional stoic, strong samurai. And because they didn't have to spend so much time painting Ito's personality and going into his wants and needs and desires, his desire is very simple. His desire is very direct. And any other complexities to his character are fleshed out through his actions and his decisions. Not so much maybe a long-winded speech or anything like that. It's usually painted by the environment and the people who live in that environment. And if you go and move that standard towards other static characters like the Man with No Name and Agent 47, it remains constant. As I said before, when you play the Hitman games, not really about Agent 47. In fact, the one time they tried to do this in Absolution, it really didn't work. It was almost universally lambasted by fans, and they kind of kicked that one to the curb. And it's kind of like became like the the stepchild that nobody wants to talk about. It's there. They still acknowledge it a little bit, but not really so much at all. Some major things that happen in Absolution, but they don't really mention it ever again. Kind of the one drunken mistake that everyone wants to forget about. But if you also take this standard and apply it to the Man with No Name, the same thing occurs. Especially even if you go to other movies he's in, like The Good, Bad, and the Ugly. It's not the Man with No Name that is the most iconic. He's the hero. He's the strong hero. He's the good in The Good, Bad, and the Ugly. But the most iconic character probably would be Tuco. Tuco, as opposed to the man with no name, has a much bigger personality. He's much more talkative. He's much more emotional and emotive. His personality is a lot larger, and especially when compared to the man with no name. And you can not be the main character and still be interesting because the man with no name is the stoic, static main character. So we get to focus a little bit more on the world that they live in. The I think it's in the middle of the Civil War. It's either in the middle of the Civil War or right after, but I think it's right in the middle of it. So we get to see, if you look, we get to see and focus more on the devastation and the politics and how people react and were living during that time. Especially the part where they had to blow up the bridge, the part where they find out. I think it was Tuco, where Tuco finds out where the treasure is. Where the treasure is, where the hint to the treasure is anyway. And that wouldn't really be as possible, and we wouldn't really be able to focus as much on the grand world of good, bad, and the ugly without without leaving us room by having a static main character. He is the pulp character, the man with no name, the pulp character who walks onto the scene and changes everything. He's not there to change. He's not there to discover himself. He's there to walk into the scene and solve problems and achieve victories where no one else can achieve those victories, solve those problems that no one else can solve. And so that's what I mean by narrative focus. That if you write a story, what kind of what would your focus be? Are you wanting to flesh out your world to the reader? Do you want to take the reader on a discovery, a journey into the magical system you've created, or the I don't know the dwarven society you've made, or the alien society you've made? This society of they're tribal, but they live in a high tech world. Something. Then you would probably want to invest more time into exploring those ideas and those things you've created, the world that you have created, rather than focusing on a main character that you have to flesh out and you have to change over time. So if you want to actually look into if your story or series, whichever you've made, comes into fruition and that's what you want to focus on, then that is what you would want to focus on completely. And if that's the case, I would suggest making a stoic, static character who can just walk onto the scene and just dominate and create the change that needs to happen. Same thing happens with Conan the Barbarian. Now, Conan the Barbarian is a little different from your Agent 47s and your Man with No Names and your usual static character, because if you look into at least the original stories of Conan the Barbarian, he is a stoic, static character. He's already really strong no matter what timeline he's in, because the first Conan actually takes place when he's about 50 or so, and then I think the second one also, and then we go back to his past where he's in his prime. But I lost connection. Be coming back. There we go. And when Conan was in his prime, he is the stoic, static character. However, he has a big personality. Now, Conan doesn't really have to change in the main stories you know him from. I mean, he loses. He struggles a lot. It's like a lot of these other characters do, but his personality is a lot larger. He is boisterous. He likes to drink and fight. Well, depending on the story, he sometimes he changes. Sometimes he's more stoic. Sometimes he's more of a drunken barroom brawler. But his personality is a lot bigger, and but he's essentially the same. But even if you take those standards and you put it with Conan the Barbarian, it remains the same. He walks in and he achieves victory, and he completes jobs and quests and fights his way out of situations that most other people could never have survived. And that's where we are. That's what I wanted to talk about. The narrative focus. And that brings us to the next point, which I will address. And just a second, let me see here. Let's Botan? LD, have you seen Boku no Hero yet? I think the support courses they have is kind of like your Oculus thing and Dr. Alpha. I haven't gotten to that yet. It's still on my list. I'm just going through. I think I'm starting what was it called? Rise of the Shield Hero next. Starting that one next. But I've also been suggested to watch Doctor Stone. Well, I'm not really sure about that one yet. But I'm slowly going through these. And let's see here. Let's see. Rosemary Moore, I think it's a good start on IndieGoGo. I think so too. And it's not too bad of a start. I've seen worse. I think it's going well. And I'm really hopeful that it will be funded, because I really would like to actually get this book created and get it out as soon as possible. I want to produce something that I think people would like. And I'm pretty sure this Dr. Alpha will be something that people will like. I put a lot of work into it, and I made sure everything is, crossed all the T's, dotted all the I's, made sure that there's major themes running through it, made sure that I like to keep to the principles of heroes are actually heroes, but they can falter, instead of the usual go-to when you have a supervillain main character, as the heroes aren't perfect, or the heroes are actually evil, like in The Boys or something. No, the heroes in Dr. Alpha are actually heroes, at least most of them are. And Dr. Alpha is actually a supervillain, but the theme of the whole story and the whole series, actually, should this be funded, was actually surrounding change. And while you have the parallel between not the good heroes aren't necessarily always good and can falter, even the most righteous of hero can be good, but can also sometimes falter. On the other side of that coin is Dr. Alpha, who is a supervillain, and just like the righteous hero can't always be righteous, the supervillain, even the most ardent, most evil supervillain, can't always be evil. There's usually something that will pull him out of his constant journey to commit chaos. Let's see. Flying Turret 2.8, the best world develops good character. Yeah, that's actually, I think I've gone over this before, but that's actually how I think is the best way to develop your character. You start off with an archetype, start off with some working traits, some working archetypes, some working cliches, and then you flesh them out over the course of a plot. Give them choices and obstacles to overcome, and then choose how they handle these things. Do they take them on head on, or do they go and hide, or they run for help? To me, that's the best way to flesh out your character. And then once you've made these decisions and you've already laid down the groundwork, stay consistent. And if the groundwork you've set was to change, for example, if they change from coward to hero, or coward to setting all their cowardice aside and taking a stance, then it would have to come with a major plot point, a major reason why. But yeah, to me, worlds and plots is how you help create good stories. Good characters. Fleshed out characters, three-dimensional ones. Let's see here. Let's see. I would pour Doodle Office. I would pour all my money if I had any. Appreciate that. Let's see. Let's see. Doodle office. Do themes particularly have to be moral messages to the reader? Not really. Themes can be anything that you want to convey. It's something that it becomes a pattern in your writing if you look at it. Let's see. Um, for example, in The Sun Also Rises, there is a major theme of being lost at sea, pretty much, metaphorically speaking, because it takes place in the era of the Lost Generation, and that's one of the major themes is wandering about, not really knowing where to go or what to do with yourself, even if it seems extravagant at the basis. You are still as lost as the next person. So it doesn't have to necessarily be a moral theme, or doesn't have to necessarily be a moral message. Just a pattern of something you want to convey. It can be something like, and that's actually one of the things, the big difference between a political story and a story inspired by politics. One of the major themes of politics might be that you don't maybe you take umbrage with the drone bombings, and one of the major themes, if you boil that down, what's the major theme? That you can be living life, and a major power from half the world away can just press a button and blow up your entire family by accident. So you could write a story that has a major theme of playing on the theme of the Sword of Damocles, where you live life, and at any minute, the sword could drop and kill you. You could have a whole culture based on that, where they respect life, but they live life and live every moment as if it's the last, because it could be. The great gods from the sky might zap you for whatever reason. Maybe they saw a lightning storm, and one of their leaders was struck by lightning and killed, and that helped form their current culture. It could be something like that. So it could be a theme. Could be in that instance, they live life to the fullest. Live just stops waiting around and then seize the day, so to speak. That's what I mean by themes. So it could be a moral message, but not necessarily. Let's see here. Alex Anderwism. The more things change, the more they still stay the same. Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes. Let's see here. Rosemary Mori. This makes sense for amnesiac main character in video games. Yeah, especially that's actually true, especially for an amnesiac character, because what do you want to explore more? You want to, because an amnesiac character, usually in a narrative sense, lost everything about themselves. But you have the choice. Do you want to explore their character, or do you want to explore the world and then have that character remember things as the world fleshes out around them? So then you have you have the little choice there. Let's see. Creepy Weirdo. Lit Dev, if I wanted to get into Conan, where would I start? I would start with the Tower of the Elephant. That one is peak Conan. It has a lot of the themes that you would see in a lot of the stories. It has the Cthulhu-esque element in a big way, as it's a little surreal. It has the, I think the only thing it's missing is the beautiful damsel to rescue, which is a staple in Conan stories, but it has everything else. It has a monster to fight. It has ancient, mysterious ruins to explore. He gets an ally who, of course, dies, and it's very interesting. Very interesting, very, very, very sword and sorcery. That's one of the peak sword and sorcery stories. There's also one that didn't actually make it to publishing. Maybe because Conan tries to rape a giant, but it's called The Giant's Daughter, and it's of course it starts off with Conan laying in the snow after like killing 50 men, and and then he doesn't know if he's dreaming or he's dead, but he hears the voice of a woman calling to him, and when he goes after her, she gets jumped by her giant brothers. They're actually giants. Now they're not just big humans; they're actually giants. And then Conan kills them, and she says, "Oh, that's not supposed to happen." And he chases after her, and but then he wakes up later and he's alive. But yeah, Conan is filled with interesting stories. It's not even just about ruins. There's an interesting story. I forgot what this one was called, but he gets trapped in like this house full of traps, and it was built by this evil guy, and it's really that one is really interesting. That's really one of the different Conan stories, but it's also interesting. But usually the formula for Conan is interesting ancient ruins to explore, maybe some treasure to find, a beautiful woman to either protect or rescue, and interesting monsters to fight. That's the usual formula. When the formula was developed, that became the formula. And the first Conan stories are very, very different because they're still really awesome, but they're different. It's more political intrigue. More like imagine a barbarian in the middle of political intrigue. But that's basically what happens. And he has to fight off enemies with his axe, and he also has to fight off Cthulhu-esque, Lovecraftian horrors also because they get unleashed by some politicians that want him off the throne. But the way he gets the throne is really interesting because he just goes up and strangles the king on his own steps, and then takes the crown. And he's a really good warrior, but not so much a good king. And people loved that he got rid of the tyrannical king, but they don't really like the way he's ruling because he's not really good at it. But Tower of the Elephant is one of my favorites because it seems like peak sword and sorcery, peak Conan. It has that darkness in it, a little bit of that paints the world as it is, as dark and kind of unforgiving, that unforgiving world that you expect in sword and sorcery. So I would start there because there's no real timeline in the Conan the Barbarian series. As far as I know, he doesn't. There's no real importance to the timeline. Even if there's even a story that the two stories that went back to back, it seemed like they would be one after another, but I don't think they were. I don't think they were. Let's see. Let's see. Flying Turret 208. Hey, Lid, I apologize for unrelated question, but how is it not a manga going? Well, actually, that's my next point. That's what we're going to go into in just a minute. Board enthusiast, how do you ask for literary criticism? In what sense? In what sense do you mean, like from me or or in general? Let's see. Board enthusiast. It's too broad. I'm hoping to open a Wattpad for fun, and I want readers to give feedback. What I've heard of Wattpad before, and I've heard also that it's more of a kind of a readers market where there's far more creators than there are readers for those creations. I'm not really sure. Maybe Wattpad should be find another platform to. If you're expecting feedback, try finding another platform. What I've heard from Wattpad was that it's just oversaturated with creations, and there aren't enough readers, so there might be a very low possibility of getting reviewed or getting any sort of feedback. The best thing to do, I'm not really sure actually. Make a maybe go somewhere else. I know there's a whole review system on a site called Fiction Press. People are really big into review over there, and it's for original creations. I'm pretty sure it's still up. Let's see. Flying Turret 208, where do you feel the plot was good and comfortable or painful to read? Let's see here. SD Ravana watched the Joker movie today. It was amazing. I'm looking forward to going to go see the Joker movie. I've been looking forward to this movie for a while. I think I might go tomorrow, and I might give my opinions and thoughts on it on the stream show idea I have for the main channel. But I've been waiting for that one because it looks very different. It's not your typical comic book movie. It's not full of over the top action. It looks more like a art house. It looks more like a deeper sort of movie that goes into deeper themes and looks into the darker side of humanity, that sort of thing. I think it really touches on mental illness, in fact. So that would be interesting to see. And it was directed by a human being instead of an NPC, so that's always a plus. And I also heard that he pokes fun at outrage culture and everything, so that's even better. It just keeps getting better and better, and the shill media hates it, and the critics on Rotten Tomatoes also hate it. So it's getting more and more thumbs up. If you can give more than 2 thumbs up, it probably has that. Let's see. Anera-chan, what are your thoughts on Lovecraft? The Lovecraft is really good. He's really good at what he does. But probably because he didn't have to imagine the fear. He's more like a big bundle of fears himself. So he was a writer making manifest his own fears in the way he felt them for readers to experience because he was crazy. Yeah, Lovecraft is an interesting fellow. Ben Belazg. Why would anyone be paranoid if death is inevitable? People are living with fear of death every day. It's a thing that is very modern. If you go back to the Pilgrim times, they expected death and they kind of planned for it. Like, yeah, we'll have 10 kids, and maybe 5 of them will die, and but we'll have 5 left to work the farm. That was kind of their mentality. And today's mentality is we don't really want to think about mortality. It's just we just want to imagine us living forever, and then suddenly we die. We don't want to think about it. When we turn away from things that make us or remind us about our own mortality. So it's a big cultural difference there, and it's very, very different. At least very different now than what it used to be. Flying Turret 8, if I had a story where a single button could accidentally kill tons of families, that'd be a story of accidents of paranoia consuming people. And it could be. That could even be a superhero plot. The hero has to press a button. If he doesn't press it, some people will die. If he does press it, other people will die. It's the thought experiment. Like, if you let people die, are you really responsible for letting them die? Especially if you press the button and people will still die, but different people will die. Like, which one's better? Like, maybe if you don't press the button, maybe maybe a train will derail. But if you don't press the button, maybe a train full of nuns will derail. If you do press the buttons, a train full of regular everyday people will derail. So it could be that kind of experiment, and we'll go into if he presses the button, is that murder? If he doesn't press the button, did he murder all those nuns? What's the moral outcome here? So yeah, it could be interesting. Something as simple as that could be painted as something huge. Let's see. The Board Enthusiast. I only want to watch the Joker because it's some SJWs, so it's good. Exactly. That's what seems to be the pattern. If SJWs and NPCs get up in arms over something, they say it's bad and evil and hurtful, and think of the kids and all that stuff, and eat the babies or whatever. But if they get angry over a movie, it's probably going to be good. That's a really good marker. Like, if anyone knows about Jawbreakers Lost Souls, they hated that one, and they really wanted to destroy that one. There's still a lawsuit going over Jawbreakers Lost Souls because they painted it as pretty much the next iteration of Mein Kampf for whatever reason. before it was ever out, and it was pretty good. It was really good. A very good read. It's a very good read. I mean, there's some problems, but every story is going to have problems. Even Doctor Alpha Miracle Child will inevitably have problems. But it's all about how well constructed it is, and how well it achieves its goals. Richard Meyer's goals in Jawbreakers was to give you an adrenaline pumping, over the top adventure story, and he succeeded. And the only glaring flaw I saw in Jawbreakers Lost Souls was one that what they Zashi and Cuffs kind of fell in love too quickly, and yeah, I'm gonna accepted it because I could see that it painted these people. I know it painted, especially if you know that when Zashi backstabs them, she was an agent. That she's playing along with Cuffs. She's the honey trap, the Bond-esque honey trap, but it also reveals a character of the characterization of Cuffs, where he seems to be yearning and searching for something to make himself complete. But I think that's what Richard Meyer was going for, because I've heard him talk about Cuffs, and that seems to be what his character leans toward. But it could have been handled a little bit better. could have been handled a little bit better. I have to say that. And the only other thing is, my favorite character in Jawbreakers is Silkworm, and I really wanted Silkworm and the cyborg warlord. Man, that book is awesome. But the cyborg warlord to face off, and I wanted Silkworm to kill the cyborg warlord. That was the only other gripe I had. But everything else is good. Everything else is good. It didn't give you it gave you the kind of ending I like. My favorite flavor of ending is bittersweet, and that's exactly what you got in Jawbreakers Lost Souls. Very, very fun read. Now, it's not The Godfather or anything. It's not Citizen Kane. It's pretty much The Expendables. It's just there to give you a thrilling adventure, and it succeeded in doing just that. But back to the point, Jawbreakers Lost Souls was a book that was lambasted by the SJWs and lambasted by the NPCs. It was painted as the next Mein Kampf, written by the next Hitler, all that usual stuff. And so because it was painted in that way, you probably knew it was going to be good. Probably knew it was going to be in some way good or better. Let's see here. Anti-Belzac stream discussing new movies. Sounds fun. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do, because I had two options. I could either pump out more videos on a quicker succession, so that I can also keep people reminded about Dr. Alpha. But I think I don't want to do that, because then I would be rushing out videos and it would seem artificial. So what I would do instead is make a stream on my main channel to help advertise Dr. Alpha and talk about other things. So it's not just going to be me talking about Dr. Alpha for 3 hours a day or whatever. It's going to be me saying, hey, I have a comic on IndieGoGo. Now let's get into some interesting things to talk about today. That's the plan, anyway. Let's see here. Let's see here. Doodle Office. I know most horror-themed books typically just focus on insanity or death of a person or people, but I wouldn't mind a book focused on other horrendous urges or thoughts of a person. Yeah, well, that's mainly Lovecraftian, is when you involve insanity. Well, I mean, I guess you're talking about something like Hannibal Lecter, or I guess in this case the Joker. It's a different kind of horror, psychological horror. But madness, the idea of madness and insanity, is more like a Lovecraftian thing, where you are exposed that there are things out in the world that that are so overwhelming to your brain, so overwhelming to your sensibilities, that the mere knowledge of their existence will send you into an endless madness if it doesn't kill you. And that's what Lovecraft. That's what he wrote about, the endless horrors of the unknown, and how we are small, insignificant specks in the universe. That's his theme. And but there are of course, it's a slasher. The slasher archetype. There's psychological horror. That's why I love creepypastas. I really love reading creepypastas, listening to creepypastas, because it gives you a whole variety of different sort of stories, and some of them are uh, less less quality than others. Usually, the creepypastas I don't really like are the ones involving some sort of monster with gore. Usually, I like the monsters or stories that revolve around sort of like humanity and everyday occurrences that slowly get creepier over time. Those are the good ones. It's that cozy mentality. The ones where that take place in a familiar setting, a very familiar, cozy setting, a setting where most of us, at least in American and the first world countries, feel safe, like in your home or a suburb of some kind. And then it's no longer safe through one means or another. You're the only safe places, the safest places that you know and have, places that they feel safe when everything goes wrong. Those are the areas that are being violated. Just like kind of like those dark web stories, for example. You feel safe surfing the web on your computer. Then you have hackers find your location, and then before you know it, you have people pranking you. You have weird people in hoodies and dark vans trying to kidnap you. So because you threatened their website or something, you find something highly illegal or you find something highly disturbing. Those are the interesting things, the interesting elements of creepypastas and horror stories in general. Let's see here. Flying Turret 208, will your story provide some deep thought? That's what I'm hoping for. Yep, if you're talking about Dr. Alpha, this Dr. Alpha will send around a lot of themes, parallels between heroes faltering in their morality and villains maybe faltering in their evil. You have motivations, diving into a little bit of what might cause a person to go from not a non-villain to a villain. We'll explore that with several characters. So if you're talking about Dr. Alpha, then yeah, there's going to be. It starts off with shameless superhero cliche, and then we go into deeper, darker themes. The board enthusiast, strange off-topic question. Do you think Scooby Doo is in the slasher genre in its base form, despite being suitable for children? That's a good question. It could be. I mean, they dress up as monsters, but no one gets killed. It's mainly just like a mystery. It's more of a mystery horror. Not necessarily as slasher. But the monsters do strange things. So I guess you could say that. It's just kind of a slasher show without the slashing. But usually it usually involves something else, like scaring off people so they can go into the mines and mine out all the gold in there or something, or scare someone into surrendering over their fortune or something like that. It's usually something like that. So it's more like I would say it's more like a murder mystery without the murder, like a Columbo, like more like Columbo. Your basic mystery with I guess minor horror elements, people in rubber masks, that sort of thing. So I guess you could say that, but it's not. But there's just no slashing in it. Right. Let's see. Let's see. Flying Turret 208. I'm friends with the monster that's under my bed. Get along with the voices inside my head. Me after drinking the water, consuming the chemicals, turning Cyberfrog's gay. I also, on that note, I did order a copy of Cyberfrog, and I do intend to do a narrative breakdown on it. I think I'm going to do a video on it though, not on a live stream. But and considering the controversy surrounding that comic and the sides being taken, the pro Ethan Van Sciver and the anti Ethan Van Sciver, I feel obligated to relentlessly mock one side. So once I get it, if it's good, the anti Ethan Van Sciver crowd will be relentlessly and mercilessly mocked. But if it's bad, the same will happen to the pro Ethan Van Sciver. There's no hatred towards either side, but considering the ardent defense or ardent condemnation that we see on either side, someone, I mean, the great George Carlin said it's really fun to mock people who take themselves kind of too seriously. So that's what I intend to do. And I have to say, so far, it's not looking too good for the anti-Ethan crowd. Not looking too good. Most people who are objective and honest have come out to say that, yeah, it's really good. And they want more. Even that Star Wars girl, who all the anti-Ethan crowd people are pushing as definitive proof that it was a big scam or that Ethan's work was horrible, is false. She came out with a video almost the next day saying, "You didn't pay attention. I said in the video the opposite of what you're saying. You just didn't pay attention to it," which I completely can empathize with. You know how many times, how many comments I've gotten on the Eastern versus Western story structure, either Eastern versus Western storytelling video that try to convince me that Nakama actually does exist in the West, even though I say that exact same thing. Quite a few. You know, that's piled into all people saying, well, you know, what China and Korea and Japan don't constitute the East, and that it's an American ideal that Eastern countries make up the East, and then okay, well, what does? Oh, about the Middle East? The Middle East is not the East. That's why we have the word "middle" in front of the word East. Okay, the East is not the East is the East. The Middle East is the Middle East, and by that virtue, the Middle East is not the East. So, but I do intend to go over these the East, the Middle East, and it's really interesting because they're very mired in oral tradition, and they have very, very, very skilled storytellers called Hakawati. And it's very interesting because they will enrapture you. I think I think there was a story of one of these famed storytellers who was given orders by the Sultan to stop telling stories because he told one continuous story for about 800 days in a row. And people were saying, okay, we need this to end already. Because there was always the goal of the Hakawati is to always end on a cliffhanger. So a good example of this storytelling tradition would be 1001 Arabian Nights, where Shahrazad would tell a story and then leave it on a cliffhanger and wouldn't continue that story into the following night. That's the traditional oral tradition of storytelling in the Middle East. That's basically how it goes. So it's a very interesting thing to go over. Let's see. What have we here? Let's see here. Now, flying turret to 8. Give her high enough intellect or skill to develop her own weapons, or make her an alien to explain her unnatural strength. Mary-chan, how would you write a female action heroine? Yeah, just in that sense, I would look to Atomic Blonde because they did a really good job in that sense, or La Femme Nikita. But Atomic Blonde is a more action-oriented one, because if you compare Atomic Blonde to, say, John Wick can just tear through armies of people. In Atomic Blonde, she was up against maybe a handful of the same guys because she's not as physically capable. But she could still beat them. She still beat them in physical combat. That she had to think a little bit more strategically, and that's also its own line of fun. Like you can spend more, you can flesh out the enemies a little bit more, I suppose, but it's more along the lines of remembering that her punches against a man isn't going to do as much damage as, say, John Wick's punches against a man. So she would have to think more. She'd have to go for more vital areas, or use weapons, or use obfuscation, distractions, that sort of thing. That's how I would do that. In fact, that's what I intend to portray if Dr. Alpha gets funded and everything is successful, and I'm able to come out with my next comic idea. Is that James Bond marrying, a Russian spy sort of thing. She'll be the main character, and she will be action oriented. So that's what I intend to follow through on. Let's see here. Let's see. What have we here? A clown world? Very much so. Very much so. But I think the tide is actually turning, especially since we had Dave Chappelle come out. Dave Chappelle and Bill Burr came out with two incredible comedy specials, and it's very interesting because Dave Chappelle seems like he is the normie who suddenly took notice of cancel culture and woke culture and said, "Hey, here's my normie take on this." And then Bill Burr is the guy who's been like on Twitter every day and following this for years and getting mired into the whole mess. He's the guy who's been in the trenches, and you can tell. And he comes out with, and he's far more savage than Dave Chappelle, and you can tell the difference. Dave Chappelle is more normie, reasonable, level-headed guy, giving deference to the NPCs a little bit, while Bill Burr knows, no, don't give any deference to these people. These people are here. You're only more recourse to anything NPC or SJW is relentless and merciless mockery. There is no let's talk this out. There is no we're going to have a discussion or a negotiation. It's only they want to destroy you, and will you let them do it? Those are the only things. And by saying no, I'm not going to let you do it, I mean, do not bend to their commands and just mock them relentlessly. Just mock them at every turn without mercy, and do not let up. That's your moral duty as a normal human being. Well, just a human being, because they're NPCs, not actually people. They are robots spouting out pre-programmed phrases and committing pre-programmed actions. Let's see. Flying Turret 28. Latest Devil, the end, all comic, all mocks those whom falter. The word Enthusiast, I've heard you all talk about Ethan Van Sciver. Who is he, and what do you think of him? Ethan Van Sciver is a decades-long veteran of the comic book industry, and he was blacklisted from the industry after it came to light that he supported Donald Trump. He still supports Donald Trump. He also votes Republican, and that is the reason why they blacklisted him from the industry, and that's why he fell into the movement of Comicsgate. And they basically ruined his life because he voted Republican. Because he was one of those people who had the absurd idea that giving more and more power to the government is a good idea. So they ejected him from the career he's known since he was in his 20s, since he was 20 years old. Or before that, I think. I think he said it was before that. Like he could just vote by the time he was already out with Cyberfrog. So yeah, he's been in comics almost his entire life. And they ejected him from the industry, from the profession he's known most of all of his life, because he voted Republican. And then people who were once his friends just turned on him at the drop of a hat because of his political views, which is pretty in line for NPC culture, which is why I say there's no deference that should be given, no talking things out, no negotiation. Do not even try to make friends with these people, because they will take whatever you tell them and turn it against you. They will stab you in the back. They will slit your throat. They will try to burn down your house, both metaphorically and probably in reality. They don't put anything past these people. As Richard Meyer said, these NPCs and SJWs are the worst people humanity has ever produced. He's fought terrorists. He's fought terrorists who have brainwashed little kids into blowing themselves up, which is probably something I'm pretty sure SJWs and NPCs wouldn't blink at if they could, and if they could get away with it. Pretty sure they would send literal children to blow themselves up in the houses of people they hate and not even blink an eye. And then if you hate them for sacrificing children, they will play the victim and then link their patriot. These are horrible, soulless, heartless human beings and are only suitable to be either ignored or to be mocked relentlessly. But other than that, Ethan Van Sciver, after being blackballed, he kind of became a de facto leader. He's not the leader of Comicsgate, but he is a de facto leader. He is an iconic figurehead of Comicsgate. Whenever someone thinks of Comicsgate, they put Ethan's face on top of it. There's been some drama, some fracturing, some factioning off or whatever. I haven't been keeping up with that part. The only thing I like about Comicsgate, though, is the principle that it is a community where both the consumer can ask for what they want, where the consumer's wants are listened to, and in a community on the other side where not only the consumer's wants are listened to, but creators are free to create what they want and free of corporate mandate. And not only can they succeed, but they can thrive. And Ethan Van Sciver and Richard Meyer both prove that. Richard Meyer raising over $400,000 for his Jawbreakers book, and Ethan Van Sciver almost going on to $1 million for his Cyberfrog book. And that's good. That sounds good to me. I like the fact that independent publishing is on the rise because the corporations don't want to give. They don't want to let go on their NPC ideology, no matter how much it hurts them. Let's see. Doodle Office. I know with a small theme I have for my book, it being called cute-looking characters going through challenges and having flaws, and by the end they find light at the end of the tunnel or train. That's a good story to me. It sounds like a good outline for a story. Go through flaws, and it gets dark, and then it lifts up like the tunnel, like exiting a tunnel. Flying to 208. I'll let describe Ethan. I believe spoken with Ethan before. Maybe all I know is that EVS used to work at Marvel and helped with Jawbreakers, I believe. I've never spoken to EVS directly. I have been on his live streams. I mean, I've watched his live stream, but I have followed Comicsgate for, I guess it's been years now, several years. So I think since 2017, something like that. And the ideas behind Comicsgate intrigued me. That's why I followed it, and that's why I still follow it. And that's why I still believe in those principles. Now, in these new things that have come out where, creators, you should go to your corner, shut up, and just produce works for the consumer, that's not the mentality that should be fostered. It's not, consumers aren't masters and creators of comics aren't slaves. That's absurd. That seems to be one of the prevailing ideas nowadays. One of the factions of Comicsgate, where creators are just, I guess, workers in a sweatshop, and consumers are people with the whips. Just come on, create. No backtalk, creators. Just create comics for me to buy. And I don't know. There's also a thing about. This also seems to be this very, very strange idea that these comic creators should just shut up, sit down, produce works, and not get paid for it. It seems to be some sort of resentment from a faction of Comicsgate now, where if you make money on these comics, you're a bad guy, and that's not how things work. You can't. I'm not going to create comics or anything just for the fulfillment and pleasure of your entitled sensibilities. It's a symbiotic relationship here. Okay, you get interesting, fun stories that you want, and the creators get monetary compensation. That is the way of capitalism. That's the way it should be. Okay, both sides have their own rights, But just as the consumer has the right to receive the products they buy, the consumer doesn't really have the right to scream in your face. Doesn't really have the right to scream in the creator's face, and that's not really how things go. I mean, there should be some mutual respect between customer and consumer. Isn't your big corporation retail? It's a it's mom and pop shop, and the community consumer coming in. It should be mutual respect, mutual trust, and more of a friendly. I believe more of a friendly relationship between creators and consumers, rather than master and slave. So I don't think that's how it should be. I certainly didn't think of it that way when I was buying Comicsgate books like Jawbreakers. I didn't think Richard Meyer was my slave. I didn't think he should shut up and produce comics. I like to hear what he has to say. And the same goes for my favorite authors. That's why I listen to them. I listen to the interviews. I don't want them to just shut up and produce the next work. I want to hear what they have to say. I want to hear their experiences. I want to hear their opinion on things. Why they write, and what do you think writers should do if they're looking into getting into the industry? What is their philosophy behind character creation, behind narrative progression, that sort of thing. It's not just shut up and sit down and do your work. We're not in school. It's not elementary school, and the consumer is not the teacher. It's a symbiotic relationship that should be built on mutual respect. Okay, they could say that, oh, if you don't produce the works I want, you don't get my money. If you don't do what I say, you don't get my money. Well, if you don't show me respect, I don't have to sell to you. And there's a big difference between the Marvel creators having gone and calling all the people they didn't like Nazis. Okay, there's a big difference between doing that and ejecting someone for being rude. If you go into some of these stores, especially the mom and pop stores, and you see a little sign that says, "We reserve the right to refuse service to anyone." And that's usually in a well-meaning business that is there for monetary gain. It's usually reserved for customers who are belligerent. Those are the customers that run up and scream into your employees' faces, that scream into your faces. Those are the customers that usually get ejected. Those are the customers to which that we refuse to serve we reserve the right to refuse service to anyone. Those are usually the customers that gets painted on. So no, you don't have the right as a consumer to yell in a creator's face for whatever reason. Even in retail, okay, even in retail, the people who have to put up with that are the employees. But if the boss steps in and says, "No, this is not how I'll let you treat my employees," the boss can easily kick out that consumer. The consumer does not have the right to vandalize, not have the right to insult or be in any way rude to the consumer. I mean, to the creators or the owner. But it's the owner who can choose to put up with it. So to me, it's master and slave relationship, and that's the kind of relationship you should have with the consumer. It's not the kind of relationship a creator should have with the consumer. It's not the relationship a consumer can have with the creator, because it can go the other way around. It can go the other way around, and you see this with Marvel, where the creators treat their consumers in a slave relationship, that you better buy my book. You are obligated to buy my book no matter how expensive, no matter how horrible it is. Those are the words of these Marvel creators. And that's why they call you Nazis if you say, "Hey, I don't really like your book. I didn't really like it. I don't really like the political message you're trying to force into it." Well, then you're a Nazi. You are a Nazi. You're a racist, bigot, sexist, whatever, and don't buy my book. There's a big difference between doing that, saying don't buy my book because your political ideology differs with mine, and saying that, "Oh, you're very rude to me. You yelled in my face and you threatened me. I don't want to sell to you anymore." And that is a big difference. Okay, so it would be wrong if a creator said, "Okay, I'm not going to sell to you because you criticized my book." That would be wrong, because the consumer has a right to criticize the product that you give them. But it also be it would also be wrong for the consumer to uh, go get up in your face and yell at you. It's not something that you're supposed to do. I mean, we live in a civilization. We live in civilized society. That's uncivilized behavior, and the owner of the mom and pop shop has a right to kick you out for it. You don't have the right to do that. It's up to the owner whether he wants to put up with it. And let's see here. Unser 0474 Devil, thoughts on female action characters who are written to be male sized, like Brienne of Tarth or Bobby, the Space Marine from the Expanse, as described in the books, not the shows. I really like Brienne of Tarth, mainly because she was written pretty well. She was very feminine, despite the fact that she was very big and strong, and that her only, the world of Game of Thrones is very much the black and white world of the actual medieval times, where you didn't have the options of saying becoming something different than what you were born into or what you were naturally good at. So Brienne of Tarth seemed like a woman who wanted to be feminine. She wanted to be the typical princess style woman, but she was big and strong. And so she took the only course of action that was available to her, and to become a female soldier. Brienne of Tarth was portrayed correctly. There's a big difference between someone like Brienne of Tarth and, say, a Mary Suish character, one of these weirdo creators who think that you can make a 500-pound woman with muscles and everything, and she's automatically better at everything. You can't really maintain that weight if you're out doing things every day, unless you're eating gargantuan amounts of food. I mean, if you look at these strongmen like Eddie Hall or Robert Oberst, they weigh like 400, 500 pounds of fat and muscle, but they have to eat maybe 10,000, 20, 30, 40,000 calories a day. But they're always having to eat something. They can't really go through an hour or so without eating something, or else their weight will go down. So you can't be the super strong 500-pound woman going around and fighting the good fight and still maintain that weight. Regardless of what the NPCs say, they can't. It's very hard to be a fat superhero. It's very hard to be a fat soldier who is on active duty, who's in like a pressing war. And that fat will get replaced by muscle, but they don't. But the NPCs don't really like muscle. They like fat, out of shape people. It's really strange. Really strange. It doesn't click logically in most people's minds, because the first question you ask yourself is, "Hey, how if they're doing all this, how are they maintaining their weight? Why are they still so fat? Shouldn't they have lost weight?" And so Brienne of Tarth was written well because she was strong, she was big, but she had that complexity in her character that she also wanted to be feminine. She also wanted to be the typical princess, and that's so. Yeah, I like Brienne of Tarth. She was one of my favorite characters. I really liked her. Let's see. My favorite character, however, in Game of Thrones is, of course, the Hound. He's awesome. And let's see. Nero-chan, do you think it would be a good idea if someone made a RoboCop sequel that mocked political correctness? I mean, not so blatantly, but that would be an interesting idea if RoboCop could, if he ran into like a cancel culture or something. that'd be entertaining. Flying Turtle 8, now let's talk like professional men. Let's use facts. Like, that's what you're into, like being the IQ below 10. Mr. Wade. Always use facts, and in the world of NPC culture, facts are, of course, equal to insults. So are bullets. Insults are equal to bullets in the world of NPCs. Artist Kill the God. If you have something to say to these folks, bite your thumb at them. Shakespearean theme. Shakespearean insult. See here, flying turret 208. Oh Lord, left would do that. You know what? 5 years per living bomb ain't so bad. Let's see. Scale the God, fire your bad customers and quit your bad sellers. Well, that's essentially what you do. You essentially quit. You fire your bad customers by ejecting them from the store and then banning them. You no longer sell to them anymore. That's what they do in mom and pop shops all the time. Because in mom and pop shops, you're working closely together with all your employees. I mean, your employees are probably your son or your cousin or your brother. So you don't usually can't or won't tolerate some random customer coming in and yelling at them for no reason. It's different in big corporate retail because you're just a number. As an employee, you're just a number, you're just a paycheck. You're just an expense that they have to dish out. So of course they expect you to take the slings and arrows of the customers, and it's up to the manager whether or not they want to appease the customer or eject them from the premises. So it can still happen even then. You don't have the right to be belligerent in that manner. Okay, you don't. It's something you can do, but it's not necessarily something you have the right to do. You're not automatically guaranteed that you'll be getting away with it. You might just get yourself a permanent ban from that store. That's what Comicsgate is. I mean, Comicsgate is essentially a string of mom and pop shops. Comicsgate creators and the modern independent creators aren't just separate corporate entities, so of course they're not going to be able to produce with the same speed and at the same rate. It's all the same guarantees as a big corporate entity. They're mom and pop shops. They're single-owned businesses. Maybe that's a team of 2 or 3, but definitely not thousands of employees. So, but they are selling what you want. That's the advantage. They are selling what you want, and as a customer, you are not just a number to them. Because they're mom and pop shops, they treat you with more respect. You are a face. You are a person. Whereas in a big corporate retail industry, you are just a number, and they don't care if you never come back to them. Because for every person that leaves them forever, there are 1,000 to 10,000 more ready to take their place. So it's a trade-off. But yeah, either way, it's not a master and slave relationship. That's why it was outlawed. Keeper weirdo, can we all just get along and buy crap? Exactly. That's what I intend to do. I intend to create this comic. I intend to get it funded, and I intend to sell it without all the nasty drama. And see, the bored enthusiast. I'm working on a tale about a warrior who will give anything for vain glory versus his sister, who uses violence in efforts to stop war and fighting. Both take the fall and have to meet each other halfway. Well, that's interesting. Who do anything for vainglory? So they'll have to. And then she commits violence to stop wars. And that's a interesting contradiction on its own, which uses violence to stop violence. And then the other guy he goes on journeys, I suppose, to do anything to gain fame. Maybe he's fighting that war. So it might be an interesting concept to go through. Flying Turret 208. Sounds like My Little Pony and Hasbro. Here's your pony. Here's your friendship. Now shut up and buy our toys. That's usually how it goes. Those big industries and big IPs, yeah. Doodle Office fat fetish. Yeah, it's really creepy. Really creepy. Banara Chen, feminist fat fetish. Exactly. Very creepy. Creeper weirdo. You guys seen the weird obsession with NPCs and the cheesecake cakey female? Oh yeah. I say about. I go over this in my next video for a little bit. But the same people who'd laugh at you for mocking, for not liking or critiquing movies about quote unquote space wizards, they say space wizards to disrespect the original IP and laugh at you. because oh look, you're taking so seriously um this movie that's about it's this sci-fi fantasy movie. You're taking it so seriously. It's just a movie, bro. And then they immediately turn around and they critique cartoon women and pretend that they are the next Martin Luther King for doing so. It's really bizarre, and they have no self-awareness. How are you going to insult people for taking a, a, a movie that has become a standard pillar in American pop culture seriously, and then turn around and cry foul when you see someone has drawn a female body that is attractive and not 400 pounds. These people are beyond parody, and they are the worst humanity has ever produced. I'm pretty sure they would easily and without hesitation do anything the Nazis would have done, and probably worse. So it's best not to give them power. Let's see here. Artists killed God. They might be fat fetishists, but for the wrong reasons, and with more self-aggrandizement than necessary, or with enough thought as to why they remain fat. Yeah, because they don't want effort. That's why Ray is the Ray she is. She doesn't have to work for anything. She's just awesome. They want to paint a world. They want to indulge in the fantasy that they don't have to do anything to be a hero. They don't have to work to be good at anything. They just have to be. They just are. They're already good the way they are. It's the world that's wrong. That's their main ideology. At the board enthusiast, basically a vain soldier who only uses violence when necessary, but won't sacrifice anything if it's not for glory versus for a peace-wanting SAW who uses violence to manipulate society, kind of like Thanos. I think Ethan Van Sciver said this once that they use violence to silence, and they think themselves the good guys. Yeah, that the violence to force their ideology on everyone else, using violence to force their ideology. The fascist use of violence to force their ideology on other people is exactly what they would do. Exactly what they are doing, in fact. Let's see. Super Weirdo promote crappy comic writers to customer. So what Marvel was doing. That's why people left in droves. The bored enthusiast. Good advice, by the way. I work at retail and I always thought I had no choice but to put up with abusive customers. I didn't consider that it was my right to retaliate. And you do. You don't have to put up with that. But it's ultimately the decision of the manager whether or not you have to put up with it. Because in big industry, it's not you are not a person to them. You're just a paycheck they have to deal out. But yeah, no one has to put up with that. The customer doesn't have the right to yell in your face. It's basically up to the manager, up to the leader or the person in authority, whether or not they're going to let the customer do that. But unfortunately, the employee might have to put up with it if the employee wants to keep their job, and that's the unfortunate truth. But usually in a mom and pop shop, the boss is probably the employee's father or mother, and you definitely don't have to put up with that. You don't have to. The boss can easily say, I refuse to sell you service. Please vacate my establishment before I call the authorities." It's completely in the right. That's a right that the store owner has. It's a right the producer, the creator has. At least the store owner does. Creator can just produce something, and as long as it's on sale, they can't really stop you from buying it. But it's the metaphor is kind of close. Okay? Like the creators of Comicsgate, the independent creators, they are essentially the new mom and pop shops after Marvel has gone soy. Manera-chan, did you read 1984? Yes, many times, or at least a couple of times. Very, very spooky parallels to today's world, because we live in a society, you know. Alex Hussar, I'm going to have money to back up your comics soon. I swear, please don't break my legs. Just take your time. It's up for another, I believe. Let's see here. another 56 days. I made sure to put it to the maximum amount of time to allow people to, I remember watching people react to Jawbreakers, people react to Cyberfrog, and I said, "Oh, did I miss it? I just got my paycheck. I hope I didn't miss it." And so that's why I made it as long as possible because I know some people might say, "Oh, I don't have the money right now, but I will get it." So that's why I made it for 60 days, so that if you do want to back the book but are waiting on a paycheck or something, then the time will be available. And so far, it's doing pretty well. But unfortunately, the slots for the villain exclusive and the hero exclusive, or the slots for the villain exclusive, they're kind of running out. There's 5 of them left. Half of them are gone. The hero exclusive and the civilian pass are wide open. Civilian pass has 15 slots, but the villain exclusive, everyone wants to be a supervillain, I suppose. But if you haven't read the updates I've made on the hero exclusive and the villain exclusive, not only will it be your likeness or the likeness of your avatar, as long as, of course, you have the copyrights to it, and of course, you give us permission to put it in the comic and then sell the comic with your avatar in it. But you will also be allowed to suggest a name, a superhero name, supervillain name, powers, and a theme. So, for example, Mr. Freeze, make mine a ice theme with a freeze ray gun or something. So something like that. So you can not only give me a picture reference so that we can put your likeness in there, but you can also name a theme and powers and give a name. And I will reserve the right to alter some things so that it's not completely ridiculous. That as long as it's pretty lax. Okay, it's gonna be pretty lax, but there are the standards are lax, but there are still standards. So feel free to suggest anything you want. Mainly powers and themes. You don't have to worry about that. It's the names that it might have to change depending on how things go. Let's see. Let's see. Artist Kill the God. My story has the slogan "Treat our customers as friends and family." Before I think I'm likely going to change jobs. Yeah, that's usually the standard for most stores, that the customer is always right. It's not exactly always the case. The customer is not always right. It's just something that they say because it sounds good. Because I know that when I peruse a store, when I patron a store, if I were to yell at someone or cause a ruckus, I don't think I'm in the right just because I'm buying something. Okay, there's a standard expectation of decorum. Like I said before, we live in a society, and we live in a civilized one. At least as we're supposed to be living in a civilized one. So no, you can. I don't think the customer is right if they go in there and act like a lunatic. It's not something that I think I have the right to do if I go inside of a Walmart. In fact, if I do start acting like a lunatic, I expect to be thrown out. And let's see. I doodle office. I love hearing the stream, enjoying good life, man. Well, that's good. Glad to be helping people out. To provide something for people to listen to while they draw and create. That's exactly what I wanted to do. Exactly what I want to help cultivate. Creatives being creative and creatives creating. Let's see here. I'm an Eritrean. I made a character named Ursula Steiner. She is a neo-Nazi who kills people who won't join her on her insane crusade to create a Fourth Reich. She's supposed to mock feminists, which is why she is female. Okay, that's actually pretty good. That's actually pretty good. People who might fall in line with her way of thinking, but she goes way too far. It might be an interesting concept to go through. Artist Kill the God, my avatar in a comic? Yes, you can. As long as you purchase either the Oculus Villain exclusive or the Oculus Hero exclusive tier, you can be written in as a superhero or supervillain, depending on which one you purchase. And it can be a reference of you in real life or an avatar that you choose. But like I said, as long as you own the rights to it and allow us to put in a comic, which we would then sell. And that's basically it. That's basically it. So no no Superman or no anime avatars or anything like that. Something that if it's an avatar that you want to use, as long as you own the copyrights to it and give us permission to use it in the comic, then yes, you can put an avatar in there instead, because this is a superhero universe and pretty much anything can happen. Let's see, the board enthusiast. I used to work at Starbucks when I was young and stupid and was discouraged from talking about Donald Trump, saying America in jest, and interrogated on who I would vote for. I left real quick. Yeah, I heard Starbucks is very politically charged. Probably shouldn't be a place you would want to work at unless you are crazy, insane NPC. Those are NPC breeding grounds. I've been to a Starbucks once before. Didn't really like it. I could just taste the pretentiousness and the arrogance and the self-centered weirdness in the air. I just smell the soy when you walk inside. So I never went back. I didn't even want to go in there. It was someone else's idea. Let's see here. Artist Kill the God, both villains and or heroes. Can there be technically mutants like Beast from X-Men? Oh yeah, oh yes. Pretty much anything can go in this universe. It's as over the top as possible. It is a standard superhero universe where pretty much anything can exist, from over the top magical sorcerers to aliens to mutant beasts and gods. So the variety in which you want to convey your villain or hero is pretty extensive. Let's see here. Board enthusiast, the moral of my story: don't work at Starbucks. It's a very good moral of any story. Do not work at Starbucks. Artist Kill the God. We live in a civilized society. Are you a Joker sympathizer? Yes, Joker sympathizer. We do live in a society, but it's supposed to be a civilized one. Let's see here. Creeper weirdo, for every right you have a responsibility. It's exactly true. Even with like for example, you have a right to free speech, but it doesn't mean that you should. It means you can, but it doesn't mean you should say everything at all times. The trade-off of freedom is that as a human being, you have the responsibility to learn how to restrain yourself, how to fit in with other people. Okay, if you are yelling all the time and insulting people all the time, then other people don't really have an obligation to hang around you. So while you can say these things, there's plenty of reasons why you shouldn't, or why you should learn to have tact and what and when you say. Now, if you are fully experiencing or fully want to experience or expecting these consequences, social consequences, then yeah, go ahead. The horrible thing is that NPCs will use this argument and say, well, it's just free speech. I'm allowed to say these things, and the free speech does that mean freedom of speech does not mean freedom of responsibility. That's true in the sense that, yeah, you have a responsibility to accept that whatever consequences come with whatever you say, but what they're trying to do is ramp up they trying to ramp up those consequences far beyond what they should be. For example, to put it another way, it's like giving you the death penalty for stealing some bread. That's what they want to do. So instead of like maybe a misdemeanor, or maybe like a night in jail or something, it's like that episode of Star Trek where every crime is met with death. That's what they want to do. They want to, like, they can't fight freedom of speech. They can't get rid of it. They want to get rid of it, but they can't. So what they're trying to do instead is to make the consequences so catastrophic that you will fall in line anyway. And that's where the disparity is. Because while it is true that you take responsibility for what you say, and that some things that we should be aware of, that some things will have negative consequences, rightfully have negative consequences, like insulting someone or something like that, will have the negative consequence of maybe you getting thrown out of a place, or you not being friends with that person. The consequences, the social consequences, they should be measured. They should be equal to what you do. You shouldn't have to have your whole life ruined and be marked as a Nazi and completely unhireable for the rest of your life and pushed into suicide because you said ma'am to a man in a dress or something. A man, or you said ma'am to a woman who looks and dresses like a woman but identifies as a man. You shouldn't have your life ruined for that. So that's the little trick here. But reasonable people know that freedom of speech means that you're allowed to say what you want, but you also have the responsibility of accepting those consequences. But that also the consequences of what you say and do should be equal to what you say and do. Okay, an insult to someone shouldn't equal having your life ruined. There's the difference there. So the NPCs would like to obfuscate that point. Say, well, it's freedom of speech, and you have your freedom of speech, but you shouldn't be free. Doesn't mean you're free of consequences. Well, yes, it does mean that you do take responsibility for what you say, and you should take responsibility for what you say, because rights come with responsibilities. It's not just something it's not an absolute free thing that you can just do. It comes with responsibilities, but you shouldn't have to accept over-the-top consequences. The punishment should fit the crime. That's the difference there. That is how they're trying to get around free speech, to scare you falling in line, scare you into falling in line with their pronouns and zims and zers and stuff. Because if you don't, they're going to ramp up the consequences on something you said 100 years ago or something, and then ruin your life. Let's see here. Let's see. Flying Tour 208. Did I miss the bit covering the manga? No, we haven't gotten there yet. I might save that to next time. I've been working on it. I might save that to next time. Let's see. The board Enthusiast. I think that might be for next time, I believe. Hardest to kill the god. They make their responsibilities for your actions as Damocles' sword too powerful to bear. Yeah, that's their idea. They want to ruin your life over a joke. Not even an insult, but a joke. That's their plan. Get around the First Amendment. Because they hate that thing. They hate the amendments. They want to drown out your ability to speak and stand against them. Because they're fascists. They're tyrants. The worst people that humanity has ever produced, as Richard Meyer said. Worse than terrorists. Probably even at least equal to Nazis and their mentality and what they're probably willing to do. Let's see here. It's been an hour. Yeah, but I guess we got sidetracked and carried away with other things, I suppose, with the manga thing. So I might save it until maybe next time. Board Enthusiast, by the way, Lit Devil, I love how personal and conversational your streams are. You give attention to all the chat members and consider their ideas. I appreciate it, and that's why I'm keep coming back. Yeah, that's the idea of these streams. I really wanted to give people who like my content a chance to interact, to see what their ideas are, because that's what should be done. Okay, no matter how smart you think you are, no matter how learned you think you are or how much you think you know is always something. There's always a piece of wisdom out there that you don't have, and no matter how much of a novice you think yourself is, there's always something that you have that no one else does. I learned this in in a college course where we wrote letters to professionals, and everyone was like, "How come we're writing letters to professionals? We're just college students." And the teacher said something along the lines of, "Well, I mean, they are professionals. They've been in there for a long time. It's always nice to see something from a fresh perspective, from a new perspective. And there's always something, and it's something I learned over the years. There's always something, no matter how novice you think you are, how new you are to something, to some industry or some occupation. But you have some sort of wisdom. You have value that no one else has. And that's important to recognize. That's why I like to have these streams, because this allows people to learn from each other. Not just me from you or you from me, but from everyone who participates. And that's what streams should be. That's what I like about it. That's why I'm doing the other streams on the main channel, because the other streams will be centered around commentary and going over things that happen recently, but that center around artists and independent creators and that sort of thing. Let's see. Genzag, Balzac. SCWs can't cope with jokes. Oh yeah, that's their bane. They cannot handle jokes. They crumble beneath jokes. They just crumble. The legs just snap in two. Not just because of their horrendous weight. Uh, the board enthusiast. And to mention how you make it fun to learn about classic and modern literature, and there's something to gain from each of your videos. Thank you. I'm glad you think so. I'm really glad when people can take something from the streams or the videos and put it into their own work. It's always a good. It was always a good sign. I'm glad that happens. Benara-chan, I agree with your political beliefs, but I thought we were talking about stories. Yeah, we were. But unfortunately, NPCs and SJWs have forced their way into political, the entertainment and thing. Mars Kill the God. If you want others to follow something that you believe to be right, uh, be the first example and sacrifice yourself. I always lead by example. That is one thing one disparity that the NPCs tend to have. They don't want to lead by example. They want someone else to lead by example. They want you to follow their example. They want you to follow their demands, not their example. Let's see. Dual Office. And I remember seeing your videos for the first time. I think it was something like, what makes a strong character, and immediately jumped on it, and I don't regret it. That's good. That's my favorites. Because one of the major occurrences that people seem to have forgotten in modern media is what makes a character strong. And a lot of these people think that a strong character is someone who can beat someone up. That's not true at all. A lot of people seem to think that nowadays a role model is someone who's just good at things, or someone who can lift 1,000 pounds or something. That's not true at all either. Because a role model is like a hero, is someone who has gone through trials and tribulations and have come out the other side. Role models and heroes aren't perfect people. In fact, they're heroes because they're not perfect. But they're people who have decided to take on the obstacle and had the mentality to push through and come out the other side. And that's what makes them heroes. That's what makes them role models. Let's see. Flying Turret 208. I had a world civ teach who connected the most minute. Not the 60-second word. Detail of an old culture or story to something modern, which was always great. He came under political attack early this school year, which sucks because he protested with blank pieces of paper protest posts around the room, and slowly put everything back. That's interesting. But yeah, it's always It always sucks when you see someone you respect come under political attack because they're always branded as something as the worst sort of person. Rosemary Mori, I usually don't know what to say normally, but I appreciate hearing my comments read when I say them when I make them, and chat responding in an engaging manner. That's what we're here for, to engage and to learn from each other and to have well, have some fun. Let's go over things. So that's always nice. It's always what I wanted to do. That's the main goal of these streams. Flying Turret 208. The video that introduced me to Lit was, get this, can a hero be racist? That caught my attention and thought. I glanced it off and saw it again. However, I haven't regretted since. Well, that's good. That's actually my very first video I ever produced uh, in my string of videos. And I decided to come out with something big and as thought-provoking as possible, as triggering as possible too, and as true as possible, because it is true. It's a one of those ethical thought experiments. That is the time people. Well, I guess it's still true that people can't imagine someone with a glaring flaw, glaring character flaw, also being a hero. Because if you are racist, you are automatically the worst person on earth. If you're sexist, you're automatically the worst person on earth, and so on and so forth. You have to be a complete and utter paragon with no flaws whatsoever to maybe be a hero in today's. By no flaws whatsoever, I mean you're a complete sociopath. Let's see. Rosemary Moore is you. The board enthusiast. If Dr. Alpha make it big, do you plan to attend conventions like Tug does? Perhaps. It's always a possibility. And we'll see. It has to. The first book has to get funded first. then we'll see about that. Flying Turret 208. I tried interacting with others in the chat, but it's hard to do. Rosemary Mori. When you not in it, it's easy to mix them up, but it's minute. Okay. Genazag, Belzag. A superhero is supposed to an example to the people why there's still villains in a continuous story. To me, it's a typical problem of superhero comic. Well, I mean, a superhero is that idea is the DC idea of a superhero, and that's why I like DC comics better than I liked Marvel, because to me the superhero should be this over the top paragon, this iconic paragon of a person, someone who will do things superheroes should do. They'll protect the weak. They'll give villains second chances. They'll always choose to do the right thing no matter how hard it is. They can go through their own trials and tribulations, but they always do the right thing in the end. That's what I liked about DC superheroes. That's what I like the icons, their iconic stature, and their paragon archetypes. They are the best of the best, above and beyond the normal human being. Let's see here. Manera Chen, I want to get into the movie industry, but I'm afraid social justice corrupts corruption in Hollywood. Hollywood is a heck of a place. It's just and that is some place. So it's very strange in Hollywood. It's not a writer friendly environment. So I've heard. Let's see. And board enthusiast. I wanted to go into the animation industry and have the same concern. I'm considering on where I should go now since I love to draw and tell stories. Well, you know, there is a huge boom in the animated YouTube storytelling circles. They usually are pretty good. They usually do pretty good job if you tell interesting stories and have interesting animation, all that stuff. So you could try that. Try that. You get to practice on your animation, practice on your storytelling techniques at the same time while getting an audience. So that's I think it's a win-win all the way around. If no other reason than just to practice. Flying Turret 208, the recurring character of what is good and bad, superheroes and villain. If you aren't reminded, you forget. Last, the world around us has forgotten a few things. Yeah, that's the essential reason why villains exist in superhero stories, is because without the ultimate good needs the ultimate evil to counterbalance it. If there is no evil, then superheroes as the ultimate good won't really matter in the long run. Let's see, let's see, let's see, let's see. Jono84. At what point does the no-kill code reach diminishing returns and become negligence on behalf of the hero? What? That's actually a pretty good moral question, because what what right does the hero have to kill? I mean, they're not under normal circumstances. They're not part of the peacekeeping force. They're not actually part of the government. They're not actually sanctioned by the government. They're usually vigilantes who work on their own. You know, if you look into Marvel or DC, it's usually just vigilantes who go around on their own, and that's why they shouldn't kill. It's up to the state. It's up to governmental powers, the authority, that should have the right over life and death in this situation. I mean, but even if you disagree with that, it all depends on how you look at superheroes, and should they stop crime at all? If the answer is yes, then that's good. But should they kill? Do they have the right to kill criminals? Without, do they have the right to kill these criminals? And that's up to you. That's really one of those questions. To me, I prefer superheroes who don't kill. To me, superheroes don't kill. Anti-heroes do, but superheroes, to me, do not. But it's really up to you. It's really it's up to your decision. What do your sensibilities say? That's one of the beautiful elements of superhero stories, that it makes you question these. It gives you these moral questions, a ripe, fertile ground to grow these moral questions, these thought-provoking questions. Let's see here. Artist Kale the God, I'd say start your own thing. In regards to starting your own thing. Yeah, to start your own thing. I mean, you don't have to necessarily start your own animation industry or studio. Like I said, start out with something small, like a YouTube channel where you animate stories or something. We know some channels who got to start with animating other people's stuff. Like if anyone has seen Critical Role, some people have gained an audience by animating scenes from Critical Role. So that could be something you could do. And then once you have the audience, make your own stuff. I mean, there's always options. Always options. Board Enthusiast. I'll consider that. I've been trying to build an audience on Instagram with my illustrations, but maybe it's time for me to expand. What do you think? Yeah, it's. I mean, on Instagram you can write a little story and put a picture there, but on YouTube it's more personal. People, even if you don't show your face, you can use your voice. You can tell stories about your life and animate all at the same time. So I think it might be easier to grow a large audience on YouTube, especially if you're an animator, because people love animation. Flying to 8. Don't read this comic. Music starts. Track begins. Don't bet on. We're on sinking ships because they'll turn your chips to trash. You got to set your sights and hopes on getting not to crash. On setting not to crash. Mineritran, I think the worst flaw of the social justice hero is that unless you are the group of humans that character represents, then there is no reason to like them. 80s heroes who could be liked by anyone. Yeah, that's true. If you don't fall in line with the NPC's sensibilities, you are evil. There's no room for context. It's just simple black and white. Let's see here. Find 028 is Dragons and Dungeons and Trailer Searcher. Yes, I know there are Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder. Trail Searcher. And Pathfinder is a good movie. It's the one about Vikings. And yeah, Vikings where the guy defends a bunch of. I know it's a game, but it's also a movie. And the bad guy is Mr. Krabs. It's really funny. Or the guy who voices Mr. Krabs. Artist Kale the God. Doc Firebird has 20k subs by playing Dead Cells. Flying Turret 28 is a rebel that don't read and he reads. Absolutely. He told me not to read something. You told me not to read something? Of course I'm going to read it. Rosemary Mori, the interactions, the effort in it is what I appreciate. Good. I mean, that's what I try to do. Bring a closeness, a more sense of togetherness, without me having to open a Discord. Artist Kale the God, same to be said that Hard Leg Gaming has 20k subs and is technically only a voice. Burr Enthusiast, have you noticed that Thanos is an SJW? He wants to wipe out half of humanity since resources are scarce, while real SJWs want humanity to have fewer children and reduce carbon footprint. Yeah, you have the same kind of mentality. Except I think that Thanos might be more moral. I don't think he wants to eat children just yet. Flying Territory, my name is Eugene Krabs. You Vikings better eat from my restaurant. You must all be hungry. Please fork over all your cash. Doodle Office, the idea of a villain maybe just realizing what they are doing is wrong always hurt me. Like they thought they were doing good, but when they realized the truth, they destroyed them and destroyed them. Yeah, there's a trope called the well-intentioned extremist, and their idea is that they're dedicated to doing whatever it takes to doing what they think is best for the world. So I think a more blatant example of this might be Adrian Veidt from Watchmen, who blew up New York to force everyone into peace. He was a well-intentioned extremist. He was wrong. He was probably wrong, but that's his character archetype. He's a well-intentioned extremist. He thinks he's doing correct. Thinks he's doing right. He thinks he's saving the world by doing something terrible. And the ends justify the means. Them, which is why there's such dangerous bad guys, because they act with such passion and fervor because they think they're the good guys. Let's see. Artist Kill the God fell from heaven. Of course, he's a rebel. And Flying Territory, Digimon did this in one part near the end of the show. That's what I wanted to talk about. I think I'll go ahead and end the stream here. I had a lot of fun, even though we didn't talk about too much. We just kind of rambled a little bit. But yeah, the topic was, static character. Focus on either the character or focus on the world you want to flesh out. And next time, we'll go over the 5-man band. We'll make a 5-man band together, and it'll be the 5-man band that will appear in the Not a Manga story that we have. Thank you everyone for joining me tonight. Hope you had fun. Hope it was at least entertaining. And I will see you all next time.